Hello, and welcome to the NVT Phybridge DHCP Pool informational video. My name is Nico, and today we will be discussing DHCP, its uses, and how to configure dynamic host configuration protocols on the Flex and Clear 2410G managed switch. First of all, what is DHCP? A DHCP is a dynamic host configuration protocol, which allows us to assign the usage of IPs to devices joining the network while excluding certain IP addresses that are already assigned to mission-critical devices on the server itself. In order to change these configuration settings, we will be using a serial console cable plugging directly into the console port of the FLEX24-10G, and I will be using a command line emulator such as PuTTY for the example. In order to properly make these DHCP configurations, we will divide the video into three simple steps. 1. Create a list that excludes IP addresses that we do not want assigned to end users. 2. Create a pool of addresses that we would like to be assigned with end users. And 3. Enabling the DHCP server so it can function on the FLEX2410G. To define excluded IP addresses are IP addresses which the DHCP server will not assign to hosts. In a network, there are often mission-critical devices which will have been assigned static IP addresses. If the DHCP server does not know about these statically configured IP addresses, then there is a possibility the server will try to assign the same address to another host. This would create a duplicate IP address, which would cause issues with connectivity. An excluded IP address should be created for every device on the network configured with a static IP address, or whose IP we would not like to be reassigned elsewhere. We can exclude a range of IP addresses reserved for mission-critical devices by inputting the code IP DHCP excluded-address and include the range of IPs needed for said devices. Inputting a single IP address will exclude a single IP address from the DHCP pool. Now the next part is to create a pool of desirable IP addresses that the server can distribute to other devices. In order to create a DHCP pool, we must first re-enter the global configuration mode through the configure terminal command. We will then create a DHCP pool by assigning it a name. We will be giving our pool test pool for the sake of this example, but it can be any name of your choosing. We must now specify the subnet and IP address which the pool can assign IP addresses from. We will be assigning IP addresses from the 192.168.100.0 IP address with a /24 subnet notation, so the code for the network will be 192.168.100.0 space 255.255.255.0. We can now specify the IP address of the default gateway through the default router command and the IPv4 address. This can be done for multiple default gateways, however today we will just use one for the switch. If you would like to add more IP addresses, all you would need to do is add the extra IP addresses into this command line. The command for this particular configuration is default-router space 192.168.100.1 space 192.168.100.254. In the final step of creating the pool, we will specify the IP address of the DNS server to advertise in DHCP advertisements. For the sake of this example, we will be using the IP 192.168.1.3 and treat it as our DNS. The command necessary to implement this is dns-server space 192.168.1.3. Once we have finished entering our commands, we'll have completed the basic configurations for the DHCP server on our switch. All that's left to do is enable it within the global configuration settings. For our final step, we will now enable the DHCP server, which can be enabled with the following commands. Enter the configure terminal command to enter global configuration mode. Then type in IP DHCP server. We will now enter interface VLAN 1 and then type in IP DHCP server, and we will use the end command to re-enter privileged exec mode. So, as you can see now, we have established a very basic DHCP pool for the FLEX24-10G managed switch. The FLEX24-10G and Clear24-10G managed switches are capable of much more robust settings, such as reserved-only IP address configurations, setting time limits for how long IP addresses are leased for, and NetBIOS node type configurations. All of these can be found within the user administration guide found on our website at nvtphybridge.com. We hope this has been an informative look at DHCP servers and their uses, and we hope you have a wonderful day.